And then it happened, Book 8, Chapter 7, Gordon to the Rescue. It was Friday afternoon and school had just ended. The fair had come to town and Paul and I, like many other kids, were on our bikes heading down to the fairgrounds. Gordon, however, was serving a detention at school and would be joining us later. Earlier that day, a man had come to our school to talk about the environment and what we could do to help save the planet. After we had gathered in the auditorium, our principal introduced us to a serious-looking man who was to be that afternoon's guest speaker. We applauded politely as the tall, thin man took centre stage and waited for the applause to die down. Then, without saying a word, he clapped his hands together once. He stood in the middle of the stage and waited. We sat in our seats and waited. After a few seconds passed, the man clapped his hands again, just once. Then he waited again in silence. This was repeated 3 more times before the guest speaker finally spoke. "Every time I clap my hands together," he said in a slow, serious tone, "an acre of rainforest disappears forever." "Then quit clapping!" shouted a voice from the back of the auditorium. The audience burst out laughing. Every kid in the school knew whose voice it was, but the principal jumped up onto the stage and shouted, "Who said that?" in his loudest voice. The audience was suddenly silent. I knew that no one would tell on Gordon. He was too well liked by everyone. "If I don't have an answer, then the whole school will get double the amount of homework for a month." Hundreds of fingers automatically pointed to Gordon, who got up from his chair and followed the principal out into the hallway to begin the detention that would keep him from joining Paulo and me at the fair for at least an hour. It was a hot June day, and the fair was at the opposite end of town, at the bottom of what is known as Killer Hill. The reason it was called Killer Hill was because it was a killer to bike down, so just about everyone walked their bike down the hill. Getting back up was even harder. Gordon, Paul and I have mastered the knack of riding our bikes down the hill by applying just enough pressure on our brakes to slow us down, but not so much pressure that we go flying head over heels. It was a delicate balance that most people wouldn't have even attempted. Arriving safely at the bottom, Paul and I parked our bikes and checked out the entire fairgrounds. The fair was quite crowded, so we decided not to wait for Gordon before going on a few rides. The lines would only get longer as the day went on. We were at the top of the Ferris wheel when Paulo suddenly pointed and said, "Look, is that smoke over there?" I quickly zeroed in on the direction he was pointing and noticed puffs of black smoke in the distance. "I think you're right," I said. When the ride was over, we jumped out of our seats and followed the large crowd that was now gathering near the smoke. "Fire!" people shouted. "Help!" Breaking into a run, we followed the crowd to investigate the fire. A large tent that housed a display of wooden outdoor furniture had caught on fire, and people were trying to put it out with buckets of water. Suddenly, someone screamed, "My baby's in there! Somebody save my little girl!" I craned my neck, and sure enough, I could just make out a small toddler crying in the center of the tent. The fire was spreading towards her. Several adults bravely tried to break through the wall of flames to save the little girl, but the smoke was too thick and the fire was spreading too quickly. We could hear the sound of sirens in the distance and knew that help was on its way. Hopefully, the fire trucks would get there before it was too late. And then it happened. There was a new wailing sound in the distance, and everyone turned to see what it was. It was Gordon, racing fearlessly down Killer Hill on his bike. "Ah!" came Gordon's cry as the crowd scrambled madly out of the way, tripping over each other in the haste to clear the path. Gordon flew through the centre of the fairgrounds, straight toward the flaming tent, and burst through the wall of flames. Extending his right arm, he scooped up the little girl and held her tightly against him like a football. He continued straight through the tent and the wall of fire on the other side before crashing into a row of porta potties and coming to a dead stop. Apart from some bruises and minor scrapes, both Gordon and the little girl were unharmed. The crowd rushed over to Gordon and hoisted him up onto their shoulders, carrying him around like a true hero. The mother lovingly hugged and kissed the daughter, and the little girl's father pressed $100 bill into Gordon's hand. "I cannot thank you enough," he said over and over again. "You saved my daughter's life." He shook Gordon's hand furiously up and down for several minutes. When the commotion was over and the crowd dissolved, Gordon and I picked up Gordon's bike and wheeled it over to him. "Wow, Gordon," I said, "you really are a hero." "I was sure impressed," said Paula with true admiration. "What are you going to do with all that money, Gordon?" "Well, the first thing I'm going to do," said Gordon firmly, "is get the brakes on that darn bike fixed." End of the chapter.